Today, I'm joined by Tiffany Agnew, who will bravely share her journey of loss, love, and life. No parent should have to endure the loss of a child, but I have so much admiration for the way Tiffany finds the way forward. Even if you haven't gone through such unimaginable pain, I know you will learn so much from hearing her story. Welcome to the show, Tiffany.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Tell us about your son, Braden. Tell us about him, his story, growing up, all the things.
He was your typical kid, I always say. He was really into video games, dreamed of being a YouTuber, which looking back now, I always feel so grateful that I had the kind of mindset to tell him, like, yes, you can absolutely do that. So glad I encouraged him. But yeah, so he loved video games. I always say he wore his heart on his sleeve. He was one of those kids that was always quick to fall in love. Every time he got a new girlfriend, he was always head over heels, which is actually another thing that I feel grateful for now looking back. And he actually had his first illness back when he was just 7 years old, his first life-threatening illness. So that was like his first, I guess, um, first time dealing with something so serious. And he almost passed then. He miraculously, and that was the word used by the surgeon at the time, survived that illness. Then we had 11 years where he was healthy and we had no idea anything was wrong with him. And then I just sent him out to get the mail one day. He came back into the house. He looked completely fine, but he was saying that he felt like he couldn't catch his breath. Like he didn't look visibly, you would not know that he was in any sort of distress. And then he said it was fine, but then every time he sat down and got back up, he noticed that his breath didn't feel right, and we ended up in the ER that night and found out that he had a really rare condition, and it was actually just 150 days between that very first symptom and the day that he passed in 2018.
Unbelievable. What was that journey like, those 150 days?
The 150 days, which seems so weird to most people, were almost really normal for us, aside from the fact that we had to go to a lot of doctor's appointments. When he first got diagnosed, he was in the hospital for about 2.5 weeks because they were trying to figure out what was wrong. And then he was put on oxygen. So he had to end up being in the hospital a little bit longer while they were making arrangements for him to be able to have that at home. So he ended up being in the hospital for 2.5 weeks. But if you were in our home and you didn't see him, you just heard him upstairs in his little gaming room, you would never know that he was sick. You would have no idea because he would just be up there, rambling on, playing his online video games, and you'd have no idea that he was sick. It was really the main thing that he was struggling with at that time was his oxygen levels. So he had to sit a lot, like he couldn't really stand even with the full oxygen support. His oxygen number would only stay at 85. So standing up would literally drop it down to the 70s. So he was really sedentary, but for him and his love of video games, he just focused on that. And that was one of the things that inspired me so much throughout his illness, is that he just looked on the bright side of things. Like he didn't complain, like he was just excited that he got to, play his beloved video games all day and he didn't have to go to school or do chores. So he's excited about those things too, which really inspired me that he could just face his second life-threatening illness at just 18 years old without, yelling or screaming, why me, right? Without that, which I know most of us adults would have that kind of attitude.
Absolutely. For those listening who haven't had to endure the loss of a child, can you tell the listeners what it was like in those early days after Braden passed?
Oh my gosh, those days, like they don't even feel real now. They're so awful. Like it's hard to like even go back there, just how numb you feel. Like it's like watching your life like a movie. Like you feel just completely out of control, like you're not even there. Like you're literally somewhere else just watching, but unable to do anything about what's happening.
Yeah.
It's the best way I can explain it.
Really good way to explain it. I feel the same way. And I know when you said it's so hard to imagine, even when you look back, the years that was even happening, it seems so surreal. And I know you and I have talked about our journeys through grief and child loss, and I think we share a lot of similar approaches to grief and so on. But was there ever a really low point in your journey when you thought, okay, I got to do things different. I've got to find a way forward.
Oddly, we're coming up on the 6-year anniversary of Braden's passing in May this year. And I would say last year was probably one of the toughest years that I had. But what happened was that I stopped doing so many of the things that had been helping me. Um, I say that when I look back on it now, it's like I can see that I was doing the least to help myself during that time. And I really, really struggled with my mental health.
That is so true. And I think anybody listening, no matter what they've been through, we do like we do the work. We get to a place where we're feeling better. Will we fix the problem? Never. But we get to this place where we're doing a little bit better, and then we kind of become complacent. And I
Yeah.
think that is such a good reminder, that we have to continue to help ourselves and do the
Yeah.
work because
And
grief
a
is.
reminder that it's a journey, right?
Mhm.
That reminder that it's a journey, that it isn't something that ends. I always think of it as like living with a loss, like especially one as monumental as losing a child, as like living with this injury. Like I call it a heart injury. Like
Mm.
I injured myself. I broke my ankle in 2014 and I got a spiral fracture. I had to have surgery. I have pins in my ankle and a plate. And in order to live with that injury, like I have to do like extra stretching. I have to exercise. Um, and when I don't do those things, it gets really stiff. And sometimes, even when I do those things, even when I am exercising enough, even when I am stretching enough, sometimes like the pain in my ankle just like suddenly out of nowhere will just be like throbbing and stabbing. Like sometimes it'll wake me up in my sleep um, because it hurts so bad. And that's kind of what it's like living with grief, right? Like we have to do extra things to care for ourselves. At least in my opinion, we do. We have to take extra good care of ourselves because we're living with that injury. But even when we do all the things, out of nowheres, it can still hit you.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. And I think, that self-care piece, whatever it looks like for everybody, because everybody's so different, it has to be a continual project because, like you say, the grief carries on, the injury carries on. So if we're not perpetually doing the care for the injury, it's going to bite us in the butt.
Yep.
So when I first met you, I'm going to say it, it's going to sound a little cheesy, but we met online, right? Like I think it was through a grief community or a Facebook group or something. We found each other
Yep.
and, we were chatting back and forth about our journeys. And I just loved the whole idea of Braden's bucket list. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah, so not long after Braden passed away, I found this guided journal that he had from school. Really excited, couldn't wait to see what I might find in this. But when I opened it up and started flipping through the pages, I actually found written in his little scribbly hand printing things I want to do before I die. And as you can imagine, it was pretty soul crushing at the time, knowing that he would never get to do anything on that list. But just it felt like Braden was reaching out to me across space and time, reminding me to keep going, reminding me not to waste this life. Immediately on the spot, I took it, I pulled it out of the little notebook that it was in, I brought it downstairs, I framed it. It's in my office where I see it every single day. And I made a promise that day that I was going to do the things on his list and that I was going to make my own list too, because it felt like the best way that I could honor him was by honoring my own life and then living a few of his dreams too. So we've done my book that I just released. I'm calling this the third thing off of his list because one of the things on his list was to start a business. So this is the first of many products that I plan to release in my Tiffany Agnew Inspires collection. So checking that off of his list and then checking off to publish a book off of my list. So, and aside from that, we did two other big trips that were on his list as well that, took us over to Europe twice.
Absolutely. And then you are a big believer in random acts of kindness.
I
And
call them random acts of inspiration.
yes, thanks for correcting me. Thank you for correcting me
No,
because that's
you're
an
welcome.
important part. It's an important part of what you do. So I think that's important to have the right title. Tell us about how that helps you on your healing journey.
Well, immediately after Braden passed, I had actually started a foundation, which I know you're aware of, the Braden Foundation, and we had
Mhm.
done that for a couple of years, and then that just got to be really challenging. And I started to notice that it was it was actually hurting me in the end more than it was helping me. So that was one of the things that I moved away from. I decided to close it. It was a really, really tough decision. And letting that go really had a deep impact on me. And I knew right away that I wanted to continue to do something else. So I started doing these random acts of inspiration. It felt much more manageable and even more aligned with where I want to go and what I envision for myself and for my future. It allows for me to do different things, but the biggest thing that I'm working on right now is sending out these special memorial gifts to other bereaved moms. And I feel really connected to that. And, when I sit and work on them, I have like a little workstation in my office. I put Braden's little picture frame there. I will I have a Braden playlist on Spotify. So I'll listen to my Braden playlist, or I'll like even sometimes watch a movie on one of my, like on my phone or something while I'm but one of Braden's favorite movies. And it just really like feels like almost like time that I'm spending with him. And it brings me like just a lot of comfort knowing that I'm sending out something that's going to mean so much to someone else, because I know how it feels to lose a child. So it feels really special and really close to my heart. And the feedback, so far people are really excited to receive them. I have about like 48 that are like done right now that I got to get like packaged in their envelopes, and I'm handwriting all the cards. So, but I'm
Those
doing 100. I'm working on 100 right now.
incredible. Well, and I have received
Yes.
one of your beautiful Christmas decorations with Katie's name and angel wings. And every year that I pull it out, I think of you and I think of Braden and just the connection that you have and the joy that you brought me. So I know that you are bringing that to other women as well. How many have you sent out in total so far? Do you know?
I've actually only sent out 10. So you were part of the first group that I sent them out, and then I didn't send them out for a long time. And then for whatever reason, I decided to go do a first run of 10. And then I was like, I'll do my second run of 100.
Why not?
Yeah, so it was in honor of Braden's birthday this year. I just was like, oh, I want to do this. So I held a fundraiser so that I could fundraise to cover the cost, because by the time it's a little bit upgraded since I sent yours. We got like custom cards and like little stickers that go in them. They're quite it's really quite beautiful.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
And it feels good to help others.
It does. It does. And if you look up the research on that, like it's not even like I try to tell people that it's like literally backed by science that doing good for others like improves your health. Like it can like even extend your lifespan.
Mhm. Yeah, I
So,
agree. And
yeah,
it's been
inspiring and helping others, like it helps yourself.
it really does. So when you and I were chatting online a couple years ago, whenever that was, we were talking a lot about mindset and perspective. And if we can both be honest here, I know we both said that grief is really hard. Losing a child, I cannot imagine anything harder, in all honesty, but that we can choose to stay in the darkness or we can choose to move towards the light. And so I want to ask you what your thoughts on mindset and perspective are and how you use those two things to continue journeying forward.
I read something interesting recently, and it was all about like the way you talk about your grief will determine how you experience it.
Ooh,
So like the way you talk about your loss, like if I wake up every day and I tell myself that, my life is over or my life sucks now or life has no meaning now, then that's going to be the life that I create because our words have power. They
yes,
have power and they literally affect how we show up. They affect how we show up to our own lives. So if I'm continuously feeding myself that narrative, then I'm going to show up to that life, and that's the life I'm going to create. But if I tell myself that, I've been through this really hard thing, but there's things that I can do to make myself feel better. There's things that I can do to still feel connected to Braden. And something that really, really helps me too is this mindset. I call it a co-legacy mindset. And I believe that mine and Braden's legacies, that him and I are so connected, so bonded, that his legacy will carry on with me. And that really empowers me to how I want to show up in this world, right? Because everything that I do becomes a part of his story. And if grief breaks me, if I become bitter and jaded and I give up on my hopes and dreams, that becomes part of Braden's story. When people talk about Braden, they'll say, "Oh my gosh, did you see his mom? Did you see how she's doing?" And that'll be Braden's legacy.
I agree.
And I can't go there.
Yeah. I think we are our kids' representatives here on earth. And I think
Absolutely.
we can continue to allow them to live through us and we can continue to shine their light. And I agree with everything. And a lot of my decisions and what I do or the way I choose to live with my grief, lots of times, like especially on the dark days, what would Katie do? What would Katie say? And usually I start giggling because she didn't have a filter and she would just say it as she thought, or you should do this, mom. But I do think that we do have that choice. And sometimes when we can just flip that switch a little bit in perspective, it goes a long way, right? And I think
Absolutely.
that's what's led you on your path to healing. First of
Hmm.
all, the self-care bit, which I do want to spend a bit of time talking about because you've been very forthright with that on social media. You've been very forthright with the terrible days. You've been very forthright with I'm lacing up my shoes and I'm going for the 10K hike and I'm doing this and I'm tired and it's hard, but I'm doing it. So, how has all of this physical work helped the inside stuff, help the grief, help the mental health and all of that?
Well, it's like the emotions, they can get trapped in our bodies, right? So we need that movement in our lives to create space to release those emotions. So for me, it's been imperative. I've been on a really, really good fitness journey this year. Um, Exercising almost daily now, like walking more, getting outside more. And it's a huge part of, you know, my self-care, or also my mental health care. And by taking care of myself, it helps me have the energy to like, it's almost like I need to make sure I have the energy to carry grief, right? Because we have to live with this. Like, it's never going to go away. I'm never going to wake up one day and be like, I guess I'm over it now.
Right.
right? Like that's obviously never going to happen. So this is going to be something that I have to carry for the rest of my life. So the better I take care of myself, the better I'm going to be able to carry that and manage that. And taking care of my physical health is very important in addition to my mental health as well, to give me that energy I need to carry it because it's heavy.
I was just
It's
going to
heavy.
say it is heavy as can be. And some days I imagine it as a massive boulder, like massive.
That we're just
And
carrying around.
we are carrying it around and we have to, we have to do the things to stay strong. I
Mhm.
mean, I think both of us agree that, hearing the phrase, you're so strong, you know, when in the back of our heads we're thinking, yeah, but I didn't have a choice. But I do think that we have to be strong. And in order to be strong, we have to get strong, which
Mhm.
means doing the work. And I think
Absolutely.
that, our physical health and our mental health are directly tied to one another through fitness, through diet, through hydration, through all the things. And
Yeah.
I know,
Even I notice when I get on, because I do struggle with some eating disorders, like binge eating disorder, which got really, really bad initially after the loss of Braden because I would, eat to cope, right? Or eat to numb myself. But whenever I slip into those old habits, that's when I'm struggling the most, right? Because I'm not taking care of myself. I'm not fueling myself to have that energy to carry the mental load of grief. So it's all so connected.
yeah, definitely. And somebody said this to me the other day, and I had never heard it articulated in quite that way. I don't know if I can repeat it so clearly, but that when we are hurting the most, that's when we least want to reach out to people. That's when we least want to go for the hike. That's when we least want to go for therapy and do all the right things. And it's so hard to do the right things when we're hurting, but they're so worth it.
Hmm. Absolutely. That's when we need it the most too.
Yeah. But
I, s-
our reptilian brain is saying, but I don't want to. I can't.
mhm.
Right.
I started trying to forcing myself to have dance parties, like with myself when I'm like really, really, really struggling. Like I put on you know, my favorite music, like the music that just like makes you want to dance the most. And like I put it in my headphones. I feel like it's essential to have it with headphones and you listen to it loud. And like I will like literally sometimes dance while crying. And it's like very cathartic and it like it just it again, you're creating that movement and it kind of just gets me, it pulls me just a little, like gives me a little inch, just gives me that little bit that I need to take that next step. And it helps.
Absolutely. And, there's so much science. We could talk about this for a long time, but there's so much science in those happy hormones that are released when we move our body. And, like, okay, a runner's high is great, but you don't have to run to get that,
Hmm.
right? Like just being in nature, yoga, dancing around the kitchen, we get
Yeah.
those hormones going. And those are sometimes all we need to have the hope. I can do this. I can do another
Hmm.
day. I can do another half an hour. And the more we do it, the more it becomes habitual. And that whole
Yeah.
positive feedback, it is really, really helpful. So
Yeah.
recently, you touched on this a few minutes ago, but you have released a book. It's a journal. Tell us about it.
Yes. I'm really excited about this journal. Like I'm so excited about it. I cannot wait for other mamas to get it in their hands because it just feels so special to me. I actually started journaling very early on after Braden passed. So I say that this journal was born from my own journaling practice and from my own healing journey. Early on in his loss, I would just be so focused on the final moments of his life, so focused on that ending and, worrying about, was he in pain? Did he know that, it affects every area of your life? Like you can hardly function in those early moments. So I would write in my journal. I would write letters to him, but I also just write out sometimes just like almost like point statements, like great gratitude statements, like of moments of his life that I was grateful for. Like I'm grateful that, he got to walk me down the aisle on my wedding day. I'm grateful that we got to, go on vacation to California. I'm grateful, and it would just help so much. Like, and it reminded me that he didn't just die. He also lived. His life was far shorter than I ever imagined it would be or that I ever wanted it to be, but it was a good life. And by writing in the journal and even writing to him, I was reminded of this beautiful 18 years that we had together. And I stopped focusing on the end of his life, which was really just a blip. That's what one of my friends described it as. She said, that those final moments, those were just a blip. He had this amazing life before that. And really doing the journaling reminded me of that. And it helped me to stay feeling connected to him. So I was just writing in my journal one day and I was like, I bet you there's already a journal out there that I could fill in where I could start, recording some of my memories. And then it hit me even more one night because Braden has this little stuffed dog that he actually got when he was in the hospital with his first life-threatening illness. His godmother gave it to him. So he's had it since he was 7. And one night I was lying in bed and for like a minute, I couldn't think of what that stuffed animal's name was. And it was like, it sounds like the most ridiculous thing, but it was like gutting me that like suddenly I couldn't remember his name. Now I did within like a minute remember it. His name is Chewy. But he was Braden's favorite. He had him for years, like still kept that thing. People even started buying him different versions of the same ones. It's like a little stuffed Rottweiler, and he had so many, like some of them were like this big, but like he always liked the little baby one that he got. And then that made me think of it too. I was like, oh, that could be another thing in the journal where you like write about these like important little memories of things that you don't want to forget, because who knows what my memory is going to be like, 30, 40, all these years down the road. And then I started to like look around, didn't see anything, like I didn't see what I had in mind. So I was like, I'm going to make it.
Wow. So give us an idea. Is every page, does every page have the same prompts or is it very, well, tell
No,
us
it's
what it
so
looks like inside.
it's all different. Like one of my favorite things, I'm going to show you at the very beginning. It's like a little special letter for me, but I love this part.
So describe that to us
So
so
it
that
says
our listeners.
always, yeah, always blank mom. So you can write your child's name in there. And then there's also spots for pictures. There's quotes, like little quotes and poems that I've collected about grief in here. And then there's different, all different journal prompts. So none of them are the same.
Wow.
There's different places to put memories. There's a whole section of like all of your favorite things. So you can write about their favorite foods, their favorite TV shows, their favorite toys, and their little stuffies names. And then there's spots where you can write letters to them and it gives you kind of like a guided prompt on how to do it. And then there's a spot too where you write a letter back to yourself from them. It's and then at the end there's spots about like self-care and healing practices and how to take care of yourself, and spots for you to write in how you want to take care of yourself.
That's beautiful. And what
Yeah, I'm
an
really excited about it.
incredible tool.
Yeah.
Would you say that someone in acute grief is ready to journal? Do you think it would be helpful, or what are your
I
thoughts
think
on?
it I really think it depends on the person. I think I could have done this in early loss because I was journaling in early loss. But for some people, I think it might be too much. I think it really just depends on the person. Like if you are in early loss and you're feeling called to like want to connect with your child and to want to focus on them and sort through photos and find photos that you want to put in this book, and I'd say go for it. But the great thing about it is that you can get it. I even say like when I kind of there's some instructions at the beginning that you don't even have to do the pages in order. Like you could just flip through it and fill out what you feel like filling out. So Even if you get it and you don't feel ready, you take it a little bit at a time when you feel up to it.
And it's what a special memorial. Like you say, all these incredible memories, favorite photos, a collection of your child and your life together. What a
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful gift. Where are you selling them? Are they on Amazon or through your website?
On Amazon. So I self-publish through Amazon. So that's the only place it's available right now. I do have a few copies that I'm going to be selling locally, but aside from that, it's on Amazon and people can get it. It does take a little bit longer for delivery. Takes like 2 to 3 weeks for delivery because it's on Amazon self-publishing. So if you are considering getting it as a gift for someone, order early.
So tell us, when we go into Amazon and then we'll go into books, what should we enter into the search bar to find the journal?
Well,
Is
it's
it best?
called Journal to Healing, a keepsake memory book for mothers navigating loss, child loss.
Perfect. Perfect. And then your name, Tiffany Agnew, should take us
Yeah,
right to that as well.
yeah.
Awesome. So I have a question for you. What are you most grateful for?
I think perspective.
Hmm.
I think perspective. I think some people go through their whole lives without, you know, gaining good perspective over their life, over what they want to do, over the impact that they want to have, how they want to give back. They never have that. So I think I'm really grateful for that.
That really speaks to the healing and the work that you've done. If we have any angel moms listening to this, or parents, grandparents, anybody who's suffered a significant loss in their life, what words of wisdom would you have for them?
I'm definitely not going to say you're so strong because I know how that feels. Um, I would just think, like, for me personally, I like to think that Braden is still out there somewheres. I believe that deep within my soul. And I hope whoever's listening believes that too, because that can just help us feel a little bit better. So I would say my best advice is to build something beautiful for them to see.
I love
Build
that.
something beautiful for them to see.
Incredible.
Build a life that they would be proud of because they're watching, they're pointing down, they're saying, "That's my mom."
I agree. And that's how I choose to live my life. I imagine her with me all the time, which I do think they are, just in a way that our humanness can't see them. But I
Mm-hmm.
also want, at least sometimes, that she's up there elbowing the other angels saying, see that lady down there? That lady in the blue sweater?
Mm-hmm.
That's my mom. Yeah.
Yeah, there's this lady I follow on Instagram. I can't think of her account right now, but she always has these really thought-provoking things that say, you know, what if they're up there watching you? What if everyone in heaven knows your name because they're always talking about you and talking about the things you're doing? I always think that's such a beautiful sentiment. And she just continuously has very, very thought-provoking sentiments like that on her Instagram. I absolutely love it. She has another one that said, what if the moment they got to heaven, they heard everything we wish we would have said, which I think is so beautiful.
I
Because
think
there's
you're
always things we wish we would have said, right?
100%. 100%. But living in regret is not the way that our kids want us
Oh, absolutely not.
living.
No, absolutely not.
You are one of the most resilient people that I have met on my own journey.
Oh, thank you. And
What,
same to you.
well, I think a lot of what we do, we are very much on the same mindset and the same perspective.
Absolutely.
What makes you resilient?
Oh, that's a good one. It's kind of crazy to think about, but honestly, I think that being Braden's mom is what made me resilient, right? I think that he'd been teaching me to be brave since the moment he was born. I found out I was pregnant when I was just 18 years old. I was only a few months older than Braden was when he died when I became a mom. So, and then I also had a child with that had health problems, right? He was born with an enlarged spleen. He had a condition called portal vein thrombosis when he was born, which is just a blocked artery in his portal vein. So he just like always kept me on my toes and had been really teaching me to be brave his whole entire life.
I think that there has become a time since our children have died that they have become the teachers.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I even witnessed Braden become a miracle, right? When he survived his first life-threatening illness, when we were flown from, I'm in New Brunswick, Canada, so we were flown the first night that he was in the hospital, we were flown from here to Nova Scotia. And then we were 2 nights in Nova Scotia, and then we were flown to Toronto. We were told numerous times that, he was probably not going to make it. He was listed for liver transplant when we got to Toronto, and he was on the transplant list for less than a day, maybe not even 12 hours, and they took him off the list because they said that he was too sick to go for surgery. That if he went for surgery, that he wouldn't make it. He was on dialysis because his kidneys were borderline failing. His respirator was up as high as they could make it go. He had a stroke and he just survived. Like he never got the liver transplant. He just started getting better all on his own. Well, I mean, all on his own with all the medications and, all the amazing doctors that they had there. But when you hear a transplant surgeon say it's miraculous, I feel like that's something you believe.
Percent. So I know our listeners are going to want to look you up on social media and find out all the things about you. Where should they go to find you?
They can find me on Instagram and Facebook are where I hang out most at Tiffany Agnew Inspires. And they can also check out my website, which is the same, tiffanyagnewyinspires.com.
Love it, love it, love it. Some great information, Tiffany, whether we've have grieving mothers listening to this episode or anybody going through tough times in their life. I love your mindset. I love your perspective. And I just thank you so much for continuing to shine your light and making this world a better place. Thank you for being
Oh,
here today.
thank you so much. I appreciate it.